What's up, everyone? And I want to welcome everyone to episode 5 of the Improv Life, Fernando's Improv Blog podcast. And today I have a special friend, someone I've only known for about a year, but I was immediately impressed by them because they're super talented. Please give it up for the one, the only, Mayanna Berrin.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for asking me to be on this. It's very, very sweet.
No, of course, you're super talented. I don't know. Oh, thank you. Well, talent recognizes talent, right?
Yeah, when I found out you were one of the scholarship recipients at UCB, I was like, oh, he's smart.
Oh,
he whipped it. He got it.
Well, you're really funny though. Like you're just, when I've seen you perform on stage, you own it.
Thank you.
Whether it's improv or sketch or actually like whatever super dating simulator is, some weird sketch play hybrid, but you crushed it.
Thank you.
You did that pirate role and like.
Oh, yes, pirate was I remember we were doing UCB class together on Sundays.
Yes.
And then you were in the cast, and that was so funny. I was like, no way.
Oh my God, yeah! Like you are just very talented. Like you can do it all. Like so, tell me, when did you discover you're like, hey, I'm funny, or hey, I'm an actress, or hey, I'm just talented?
Man. So that's two different branching pathways. Basically, I knew I wanted to get into theater now I don't know if I want to get into theater, but I knew I wanted to get into theater originally when I was in high school. I had been I've always done school plays and stuff, but when I was a freshman in high school, I was living in Michigan, and my school paid for a trip, or like the theater club was like, hey, you guys can pay for this trip if you want to go to New York City. And we got to see 3 shows. And the third show, it was originally going to be Guys and Dolls. Or no, it was originally going to be 13 the Musical, but then it closed like 2 weeks before we visited New York.
Is 13 the Musical a big deal? I don't know a lot about
13 the Musical is actually where Ariana Grande was first. She was in that when she was a teenager.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Basically, the gimmick with 13 the Musical is that all of the kids are 13 years old. They're like actually teenagers.
Oh, so they're not like 18-year-olds playing 13-year-olds. They're actually 13 years old. Oh, wow.
So because of that, they couldn't do the normal 8 shows a week. They couldn't perform the show at particular times because of union restrictions with kid actors. And I think it was a combination of that, and then just financially, I just don't think it performed super well, so it closed early.
Oh.
Yeah. But Jason Robert Brown, who did the music, he did The Last 5 Years, which is a very famous musical. He did Parade. So he's a pretty well-known songwriter, and it just tanked, man. It was a bummer. I loved the music. It's super catchy. It's a good show, good story.
So you literally went from Michigan.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you flew to New York.
Yeah. So I'm originally from New York, but I was living in Michigan. So I was like, ooh, I'm back.
Oh, okay. Do you consider yourself a New Yorker then?
I guess so.
I only ask because you live in LA now, and there's a.
I know. Now I'm kind of feel like an Angelino. I do feel like I see myself staying here, for the rest of it. I don't think I want to live in any other cities.
I feel you. Well, let's go back a little bit. I'm actually very curious about that.
Okay.
So when you were in high school, you went to see a bunch of musicals in New York, which is the musical capital of the world.
Yeah.
And is that where you were like, okay, I found my thing, I found my path, or this is what I want to do with my life? Did you have an aha moment?
Yes, exactly.
The whole experience?
So the third show we saw, because we didn't get to see 13 the Musical, they ended up getting us tickets last minute to this play. And I was like, oh, fuck, I don't want to watch a play. I came here to see musicals because I love musicals, because I have a one-track mind and I'm 14 years old. And I saw a play called The 39 Steps, which is an Alfred Hitchcock movie that was made into a parody play. And
really?
It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It was black box, very simple sets, 4 actors. So one guy played the lead, one woman played 4 or 5 different female roles, and then 2 guys swung every other bit part in the show. And there were 20 bit parts. So they would just freeform switch hats, switch costumes, play all of these different characters. And it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life.
Wow. So it sounds like it was a fast paced show with people wearing multiple hats, and it
Yeah.
must have been like a lot of
It was like
slapstick
a
in there.
farce.
Oh, and then you saw that and you were like, man,
Mhm.
all right, I want to do comedy. What
Yeah,
made you do
exactly.
theater?
Comedy. It was like, I want to do that. Whatever I saw, that's what I would like to do, please.
Wow, that's interesting. What, like,
Yeah.
just the fact that who knows where your life would have been had you not seen that play, or you seen another.
100%.
Wow, that's kind of cool that you can pinpoint that moment that you're
Yeah.
like, this is the genesis of me wanting to be a comedian, or maybe
Yeah.
it's always already there, and that just kind of like
I always liked
just
theater as a hobby, but I think that I just didn't think of it as a career. Like I just was like the people who, and I mean now I kind of now I kind of think that my original thinking still makes sense, which is like the people who can make a career out of acting are not regular people. Like it's very, very hard, obviously, to make it a full-time job. Like I know so many people who balance, and you're a person who balances. I'm a person who balances performing as much as they can, but like to really break into it becoming a full-time career is a very, very hard thing to do.
and
So
it's funny, I think, because you and I, we're peers, and we have a
yeah.
lot of friends who are doing what we're doing, working jobs that
Hmm.
maybe it's not the dream job, but it might pay the bills, or
Exactly.
it utilizes a skill that we can use for other things, and it's a very practical choice.
Hmm.
It's just because it's so hard to make a living as an artist or as the type of artist you want to be.
100%.
So yeah, but you're right. If you are going to be a thespian or whatever,
Yeah.
I just use that word for every possible position and title underneath that. You are a little off base. Like you're a little off beat. There's something about you that isn't normal. Not like in a bad way. Just like
It's like a part of your brain that you have to like the way that I've heard it described is like, yeah, you just have to kind of shut off part of your brain in order to do this, because everything inside of you, it kind of screams at you like, don't do this. Like it's so hard. It's so strange to like, so after I realized I wanted to be an actor or pursue comedy or whatever it was, I went and got my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from the University of Miami. And it is very odd when you get a BFA, because essentially you do what's called like an intensive theater study. So your whole schooling is focused on theater. And it's very weird to be that obsessed with every aspect of yourself, and like to think about all of these different ways that you have to present, and all of these characters that you should or shouldn't play, or could or couldn't play. This was obviously before like this moment we're in right now with like Black Lives Matter. So like there were a lot of contentious discussions about race bending characters, or like who could or couldn't play certain characters. It was a very interesting
well,
time.
let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's
Let's
talk
just
about it.
let's just get into it.
I
How
love
is
it.
it? Look, because I know you're multiracial,
Hmm.
multi-ethnic, so your identity
Hmm.
occupies a lot of spaces, intersecting spaces. How was it being in those programs? Were they like heavily white or not? Was it
Heavily white.
diversity? Like,
Heavily white.
how is it for you? Like, because from what I know, you seem like someone who's gonna get it done. Which
Yeah.
I respect about you. That's an admirable quality, and you need to have that quality if you're gonna do comedy
Yeah.
in LA. And it just, even if it's like our low level, because you have to be resilient. How did you make it like in those spaces if someone was racist towards you or some
Oh man.
microaggression? I can't imagine what you experienced.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was interesting. It was very difficult. And I think that at the time I did not have the same level of experience and awareness of microaggressions or of people being like overtly racist to me. So, because, and I mean, there was a very interesting article that I was reading. Was the same guy who had written a book about like essentially how Broadway is like a product of white supremacy.
Oh my
And
God, I want to
I
read this
know,
article.
I know. And yeah, so he had written this book in the 90s, and then he was like, hey, while we're talking about it again, like, let me bring up this thing. Let me reiterate again that that Broadway and theater for the most part are byproducts of white supremacy, which is interesting. And in the case of the musical, uniquely like a factually true statement, because musicals are an American invention. The musical is an art form that was created in America. And because America is deeply steeped in a culture of white supremacy, by its extension, it does make sense that Broadway would also be a product of white supremacy. I know that's a very controversial take. That's fine. I think that we look at the stories that are very, very popular. We look at some of the biggest musicals that have ever made any money. And typically, you don't see a lot of musicals that feature people of color in predominant roles. You very rarely see people of color in the lead role. And you very rarely see too many people of color on the production staff. And when it comes to the jobs, honestly, I'm more interested in the production staff necessarily than the casting. Because writing is part of production, and usually that will kind of inform your casting. But even once you get to that point, I feel like if you have a diverse production staff, you probably have a tendency to cast diversely in your shows. That's a theory that I have.
I mean, I can see that. I do. A few years ago, I made the conscious choice to just be more diverse with the people I work with. Not saying I don't work with white people anymore. Yeah, they're awesome. Don't get me wrong. But
I mean, I've heard some people who essentially say that they're like, I just don't really have time to work with white people right now. And I'm like, I kind of respect that, because I think like with comedy, what's unique about the space is, especially in improv, is we are writing the roles. We can be whatever we want to be. And that was the most freeing thing for me, because like when I was doing improv, like on the side while I was in school, I did feel like most of the shows that my school didn't really have a space for me, ethnically speaking, or just like typecasting wise. I think that they had to sort of create shows that were going to either like fulfill patron expectations, because they have people who are paying money to the theater in the school format, and old, white lady patrons have certain shows that they want to see, like Guys and Dolls or South Pacific, or I think about this a lot. We did a production of Carmen. Now, Miami is near Cuba. And so the idea was that the Carmen production, which is like Carmen's an opera, about like a woman who's like essentially like anti the state or whatever, like she's a rebel or whatever. So they're like, oh, let's do that, but it's gonna be set during like the Cuban conflict. So we're gonna set it during like the 50s, and the lead was cast outside the school. They like hired a woman who is a professional Broadway actress to come and perform the lead role, but the rest of the cast was filled with my classmates, and most of them were white. So they were playing Cuban people, and they all got spray tans. Essentially, they got spray tans.
You're kidding me.
No, they got spray tans.
I'm sorry.
They got black wigs and dark haired wigs.
No, they did like Cuban face.
They essentially did Cuban face. And I remember that there was a castmate, or not even a castmate. I wasn't cast in the show. That was the other thing. I wasn't even in it. Like I auditioned and I wasn't in it, and that's fine. Because like with how it turned out, I'm glad that I wasn't in it.
Dodged the bullet.
It was this thing of like the majority of the ensemble are my white classmates, and the music is very like, Cuban inspired. Like it elicits a mood, it elicits a place. And like most of these kids are like white with spray tans. And one of my classmates, I just said, I don't know why, but I feel really weird about the fact that you guys are spraying your skin brown to be from Cuba. And he said, well, you could pass for white if you weren't in the sun too much. And I was like,
no way. Are you serious? Fuck that guy.
Oh yeah. And I was like, no, it's not the same. It's not the same at all. It's really embarrassing. Like during the course of the time I was in school, most of the shows that I did were like either experimental theater where like there wasn't a casting precedent, or they were like these plays that nobody like really wanted to see, or were like commissioned to be written for the school. So like my classmates are in like Guys and Dolls and South Pacific, and like God, what other shows did we do? Like She Loves Me and all these things. And I'm in like a Greek parody play that was modernized and stuff to make it like, oh, anybody could play these characters. And I'm like, okay.
I mean, I don't know how you're not like angrier. I mean, I'm pissed off for you just hearing this stuff. Like,
I appreciate it. I think my thing is like, the more I think about it, the more upset it makes me. But my bigger thing is like sadness. It is very saddening. I remember there was a girl. I don't think anybody's gonna find these, and even if they did, like, I don't really care. I'll say what I think. Like, there was a girl, and I would just consistently
call out these fucking people. Like, don't.
Yeah, I'm not friends with any of them, and like,
fuck these people.
I know. So there was a girl. I won't say her name, but like, we developed, I would say, like a good working relationship. We weren't friends, but she would feel compelled to like say things to me like, I'm not a great dancer. Confession time. I'm not a great dancer. I have a very hard time with it. And she was just like, but you're brown. And I was like,
oh my God.
No, you can't say that to me. And so our senior year, I'm
laughing just because of how stupid,
it's
like
insane.
how obtuse someone would be to say that to you.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, just how, I don't gonna say naive, because I feel like naivete is for certain things. Like, just how ignorant could you be?
She's from Texas. There are Black people in Texas. Beyonce's from Texas. Get it together, Texas. But yeah, so we had to do this thing called senior showcase. So we have to present our best pieces of like, casting agents, look at me, cast me, whatever. So she was a musical theater major and I was a straight acting major. So I just had to focus on scenes. So I had to pick like 3 scenes from different shows or whatever I wanted to present. So she had to pick a song and she was having a really hard time picking her song. And I shit you not, like truly and unironically, she brought as an option for her to sing at Showcase a song from In the Heights.
Oh, In the Heights is a majority POC musical?
Full Latin American, Lin-Manuel Miranda's first musical.
Oh, yes.
It's set in the barrio, and the character who sings the song is Hispanic. Her name is Vanessa. That's the character's name. And it's like, there's literally a lyric in there about like, she doesn't like, in the song, she talks about the guys who holler at her when she walks down the street, and she's not into their machismo pride. And it's so awkward hearing that come out of a homegirl's mouth from Texas.
What? I wonder what this girl is up to.
I mean, she's not really doing theater anymore, but it was this thing of like, I remember talking to her before class of like, hey, I just don't know if you want to, I don't even remember if I was like, are you
You're
sure
like doing
you
like a straight absurd improv scene.
Yeah, I was like, are you sure you want to sing that? And she was like, well, I feel like it's a really good song for my range. And like, it's not like I'm singing it in the context of the show. So I don't think there's going to be an ethnic issue. And I was like, no, I think there's still going to be an ethnic issue. Cause like, I just don't think it reads weird on any person. It reads as like, you lack self-awareness at that point. Like,
oh shit, you were trying to be a friend. You were trying to be like, look, this isn't going to look good on you as a human being.
Yeah, I was like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, you're never going to play this character. Like, I don't know what you're saying to the casting directors by singing this song, if you choose to sing this song. And even our teacher was like, you sound great on it. You can't sing this for Showcase, right? And I was like, oh, I'm so glad he said something, because she wasn't listening to me and my opinion at all. Nobody listens to my opinion at all. I was not well liked in theater school. I was very much not a popular kid.
I feel you. A lot of my improv experiences in white spaces, I've been marginalized or pushed to the side, and I've had to learn how to be like angry brown guy.
Oh my God.
To get some attention or space or opportunities.
Yeah, you have to like play into this aesthetic, and it's like, no, I really don't. The whole point of improv is that I could be whatever I want. I remember, I mean, not to talk whatever. I remember the feedback you would get in our class, and I was like,
that fucking feedback was kind of like
that feedback was not effective. It was what I like to call
swallow my pride.
Hashtag not actionable. That is not actionable feedback you were given. And I remember you would quote like books, like you would quote literature or like poems and shit. And I remember the teacher was like, yeah, but I don't think people are going to get the references. And like, it wasn't super clear. And I'm like, yeah, but like, at least he's like educated and he's taking a swing. And these are like interesting setups he's throwing our way. Like it's more like, oh, people aren't going to understand the reference, or people aren't going to understand like the mood that you're trying to convey. So like, don't do that. And I was like, I just don't know if I agree with that note.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, sometimes there was stuff in that class where like maybe some of the like white performers or students, not all of them, every now and then I'd be like, I don't know if I agree with that, or I don't know if that's cool. But
I think
you know, you don't want to rock the boat because you're like I'm doing the UCB ascension or whatever.
I didn't really feel good about how UCB taught. I only took one class there. And like, why am I worried about, I'm not going to get canceled by UCB, but like, it was this thing of like, I really enjoyed some of the ensembles that I would see perform there. And I really enjoyed the like that big space, not the smaller theater, the one next to the training center. I can't remember.
Oh, the Sunset Theater.
The Sunset Theater. I really liked that space. I thought it was a really cool vibe, but it did feel like there was this like culture that was cultivated with people that I would see frequently at UCB, where they were not interested in learning any other style of improv or comedy, that they were really all in on UCB. And if you weren't all in on UCB, it was like, oh, you're just not a UCB person. Like you're just an improviser, but you're not a UCB improviser.
Oh my God, trust me, I know exactly what you mean, because I've been in improv for years before I got to UCB, and there's a million different styles out there.
Yeah.
And you know, there's all these like stupid conflicts over philosophy. It's not religion, you know. It's like you can do your style of improv and I can do mine, and we can meet in the middle, or we can be friends. Some people you can't, but I know some UCB people, it's like it's this way or the highway.
It's the elitism that I have a problem with. It's the classism for me. I feel like the thing I run into a lot, and I think it happens in every space, but comedy, because it's like this, comedy is like the free market in the most diluted form, which is, was it funny? Yes or no? And
Yes.
If it wasn't funny, you better fucking find something funny, because you're going to be like out here on the streets in 2 seconds if you can't put up or shut up.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. I think comedy of the like free market of ideas is probably the greatest equalizer. But within that, I do think you find these subsets and pockets where toxic comedy is like considered the norm or the encouraged, you know, expression. And I mostly see it in stand-up, and it's really tough, like to feel deeply. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like comedy at its core is just like a shared sense of honesty. And
I like that. That's a good definition.
Thank you. And I think like what I see sometimes with certain people in comedy is that they want to be validated, not their perspective, not their jokes. They as human beings like want to be validated. And comedy is like an efficient way for them to get that validation, because they get a laugh, and then they're thought of as funny. And I just feel like comedy is already such a tough space if you don't have a good sense of who you are. And if you are in comedy to be validated, it's not a healthy dynamic.
You know, I see where you're coming from about people being like, I'm on stage now. People are giving me attention. They're laughing what I'm doing. Yeah. I have value as a human. You know, that's okay. I can understand that, because I think at some level we all get that. You know, like some percentage, but it's not the majority of it. But if you're up there and you suck, and you're not getting laughs, and you do it multiple times, you either have to have some strong belief in yourself that I'm going to get better, or this is what I want to do. But at some point, if you're not getting laughs, you're going to be like, why would you bomb? Because when you bomb, it's such a terrible thing. It's a feeling that stays with you for sometimes days, depending how bad you bombed.
Oh yeah. And I think bombing, good comedians bomb. That's fine. Everybody bombs. Like everybody has a show that's not their best show. But I do think that there has to be an awareness of when it's a bomb versus when it's like, this joke doesn't work. Like you could have good jokes that don't work. and that's okay, just make them work. But if you as a comedian don't know how to make your joke work, that's where you have to reevaluate, like, are you at a position where you've gotten to a point where you know and can be honest with yourself as a comedian?
I will say this. The stand-ups who are really good are amazing, and they're maybe the best comedians of sketch and improv. I'll admit that.
Mm.
But you see a lot of low-level stand-ups who just say offensive shit.
Yeah.
Because they think it's gonna like
Shocking.
it's gonna get a reaction, or they're gonna laugh, or it's like, I just thought the most offensive thing. Isn't that hilarious?
Yeah.
And you're like, it's not funny. What you're telling me is that you believe in these things, you know? Or if you're being sarcastic or absurd about it, like, you fucking failed in your delivery, you know? So there's no way that I can tell that you're not a fucking monster by what you said.
Yeah, my bigger fear is when a comedian starts getting mad at the audience for not laughing. I can't stand that shit. I can't stand it because it makes me feel annoyed, because it's sort of like, it'd be like if you were in an interaction with a regular person and all of a sudden they're like, why aren't you laughing at my joke? And I'm like, because it wasn't fun. Why am I in trouble?
No, you know what's funny? A real comedian, if your joke doesn't land, you go in your mental notebook and you're like, all right, that didn't land for whatever reason. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you're kind of like, what, you don't laugh at my joke? What, you don't think I'm funny? Like,
Yeah.
no, you're doing the opposite. Like, your job is to shift your performance in response to their reaction, not to bludgeon them to react the way you want them to.
Yeah, it's like you can't externalize the problem. Like it doesn't work that way. And I will say I'm hypersensitive to it because I dated a stand-up comedian for a long time, and we broke up a year ago. And like you've never heard of him. Nobody should. And that's the tweet. But like it was really tough. And like I've never really talked about this, but like I didn't realize that he wasn't funny. Like I thought it wasn't my thing.
Was he a handsome dude then, or
no? No, it was tough because my big thing has always been like I'm not a very shallow person. Like I'm like, being attractive is one value that I have with my partners, but like I want you to give a shit about something, and I want you to be good at the thing you give a shit about. And at the time when we met, like I was, still in school, he was still in school. Like we were both kind of working on evolving into who we were going to be when we got out of school.
Yeah.
And then we got out here, and it was just like, you haven't really evolved as a person, and by extension, you haven't evolved as a comedian. Like you're not finding a new perspective here. And a lot of the things that he would try to make jokes about were like really offensive stuff, really profane stuff, and just like really tasteless stuff. And I was like, maybe it's just not my comedy. Maybe it's just somebody else's comedy. But then I'd go and see him perform, and it was really tough. It was really tough to watch because I wanted so badly to legitimately and authentically laugh at the jokes, and I like couldn't. And so I would like force myself to laugh sometimes.
You know what?
Like, ha.
You bring up a good point, though. I think personal development parallels artistic development.
Yes.
So the more you work on yourself as a human, the more that will be reflected in your art. And if you're not working on yourself as a person, then your art might not grow, unless you are working on your art. Like it's a reverse feedback loop. Like if you work on your art, that's going to make you a better human. If you work on your
100%.
human, that's going to make you a better artist. Like all that stuff. I totally believe in that.
Yeah.
It sounds like your ex is just getting lazy or complacent, or not realizing how much work it takes to be funny, because good stand-ups are hilarious and they work really hard at it.
They work really hard, and they all think differently. Like they think about the world and the people in it interestingly. And so now I'm dating somebody different, and he also did stand up in college, and he loves comedy, and he has like a deep understanding and an interesting perspective on it, and like he loves watching comedians in cars. And so I'd never really watched that show because I'm like not a fan of Jerry Seinfeld, but it is so interesting watching him interact with like Zach Galifianakis, who's like this painfully anxious person. But he's so interesting and specific in what makes him anxious and like what parts of the world terrify him. And I think because of that, those are things that he kind of takes with him into his comedy. And by extension, you look at like Kate McKinnon, and she is a very physical person, and she just expresses herself very physically. And like, you see that in her character work. And like, there are people who have been able to identify in themselves like traits or perceptions and have been able to figure out how to convey them and communicate them. And those are the people who tend to be really strong comedians, in my opinion.
Well, you know, it sounds to me, you said a lot right now. I really appreciate you being this open to me.
Oh, thank you.
It sounds like you really want a partner who they're gonna love what they do and be good at it, like you said, but also because that kind of like sucks you in as well. That gets you to kind of like think about these things deeper, and like it seems like you want a person who's like thinking deep thoughts about what they love.
Yeah,
you know, like
I like introspective people for sure in all aspects of my life.
No, yeah, this is a great conversation. I'm loving it, and it's just reflective of how you love having, you know, deeper conversations about things, just not shallow things. And sometimes with some stand-ups, they're very shallow on the things they talk about, and maybe if you make a racist joke or transphobic joke or whatever, it just be a shallow joke because you're just looking at the surface of something without actually looking deeper into like, what does it mean to have that identity or to experience life in America as that person or whatever, you know?
One of the interesting things that I like realized last year was there's a trans YouTuber that I follow, and she talks about like people who like edgelord comedy. And she talks specifically about like cis white men who make trans jokes. Specifically like Ricky Gervais was like the one that she pinpointed. And what she said that I thought was super interesting and something that I think is interesting in general across like cis white men making jokes about everything is like, you can make a joke about trans people, but it's clear that you don't know any trans people, so you don't actually know what's funny. And she shared some of her experiences in transitioning and other trans YouTubers who've also talked about their experiences in transitioning. And they pinpoint these very interesting, weird, funny, strange moments that you would only have an understanding of if you you had to be there, or somebody who had been there told you about it. And it was really interesting because like you couldn't, like, by extension, like, we can't really comprehend what the experience of transitioning in America is like unless we know somebody who's experienced it, because TV hasn't really done it justice yet. Musicals haven't really done it justice yet. So the only, like, books kind of, but not really. Like, the only touch point we have with that community are the people who live in it and who live that identity every day. So, like, not to say that only trans people can make trans jokes, but like, we've heard the joke, like we've heard the I identify as an attack helicopter joke. It's not funny. It's not interesting.
I've never heard that joke, but I don't need to hear it because I think I know what it is.
It's just dumb. It's just like, oh, you identify as female. Well, I identify as an attack helicopter, or like whatever. And you're like, cool take.
I mean, here's the thing. That's an identity that I just have the most surface understanding. Because of when I was in college, I had a lot of trans friends, actually. Not that I was looking for them, but they just came into my world.
You were around, man. Those were your people.
And they opened my eyes up to a lot of things, you know. And like, the more they opened my eyes, the more I was like, you know, there's a lot of stuff of this that I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna do my best to keep learning, but I'm not gonna comment on that experience or God forbid try to make sketches about it or just stand-up jokes in a way that, even if I'm doing my best to like be tasteful or lift them up or something, I don't know that experience enough to comment on it. I just have to like sit on the sidelines and respect and observe and give my support as being an audience member, you know. And if it's like a performance we're talking about, it's just, to me, it's weird, the communities that want to comment on the experiences of other identities that they haven't lived.
Oh,
you know? It's such a weird thing. It's I don't know. I mean,
it's a fascination, and I think it's this idea of like, oh, I'm such a good writer, I can write about anything or anyone. And I think the problem with that too is that we as a society, and like we in America specifically, have made it okay for a predominantly like cis white male industry to decide on what stories are interesting and which stories everybody wants to hear. And I heard that recently the Academy Awards changed their Best Picture requirements. Like for, I think, I don't know if it's for next year, maybe the year after that. You heard about this?
I saw the article, saw the headline. I didn't read it, but I saw the headline.
Yeah, it was like that in order for your film to qualify for Best Picture, I think it has to feature at least like one marginalized character in a predominant speaking role. I think it has to feature like marginalized people in production involvement. Like it's a very interesting thing because, and I understand the people who are frustrated where it's like, it's not fair. Like just because I didn't choose to be born white. And like now in this moment, like I'm receiving all of this karmic retribution. It's not about that. It's about the fact that for 80 whatever years that the Academy Awards have been going on, majority of the films at every single level have featured almost exclusively groups of white people. It's just bad optics.
Dude, it's funny. I had a year ago, because all my comedy heroes are white, because I grew up
for the most part mine are too.
You know, because I grew up in
against it.
It's hard. But the thing is, I'm like, but there's not a lot of like Latino comics, or they're black. There's also like, because black comics are amazing. Not to say Latino comics aren't amazing. It's just I'm not a fan of a lot of them. And it's just
Gabriel Iglesias. Like I appreciate what he does, and I appreciate like his persona that he's created that has made him like so likable and so like palatable for everybody, but I just don't find his jokes very funny.
Well, I guess for me, I meant more, because I gotta backpedal here a little bit. I meant more just like growing up.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
Yeah, like growing up. No, there's a lot of amazing Latino comics now.
Yeah.
But I mean, growing up, because I grew up in the era of like the big character comics, like Mike Myers and Chris Farley and Adam Sandler. And
I love Chris Farley.
Carey.
Like Chris Farley's just great.
Yeah, but they're all these like big white male personalities, and the movies are centered around their experience and their wants and their needs. And like, I think it does something to you. It must affect you in the long term. So like, a part of me, it's just like, man, we gotta, it's like, we gotta create content, whatever it is, that's just done by me, for people who look like me or who identify with me. Just so they don't have to just grow up in this super white content world, because I don't know. Or like, if you see people who look like you, they're in these marginalized, stereotypical roles. I was watching one of my childhood favorite movies actually the other day. I was watching Problem Child, and which is a funny movie. But there's this scene where they're in jail, and it's Michael Richards, and they're in jail, and the jail is like 80% like black men. And I was like, it was one of those things like, it's a product of its time. But if that's like, and they were the only black characters in the movie.
Yeah.
There wasn't any other, maybe one of them had one speaking line where like, I think Michael Richards says smoke, and he goes like, here, like that's about it. And
there's this othering quality that happens when you look at it that way. Like when you look at movies, there's this idea of like, I guess this is how the world works.
I know, it's terrible, because it just makes you think like, oh, this is the only roles that I'm worth. These only roles that are open to me.
These are the only roles that'll pay my bills. So like I have to play ball.
Oh, it's funny. Years ago, I forget where I heard this. Maybe it was a podcast. It was an Asian American actor who was complaining about, I forget what his name is, the actor from 16 Candles, who I guess.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Who plays this very stereotypical Asian role, I guess. And I forget who this actor was.
Yeah, but I know the character, and it's not a good depiction at all.
Yeah, but the guy said, look, he's like, well, what if that was the only role they offered him, though?
Yeah.
What if that was the only role, and that was the only representation that Asians could get at that time? So he's like, he thought about it, and he's like, I don't envy him. Like, I don't know if I forgive him either, but I understand the situation he was in.
Yeah.
It's terrible to think that, though. It's terrible to think, like, what if one day Hollywood's like, where, Mayanna? We're opening the doors to Hollywood, and you're gonna come in, but you have to play the most stereotypical role, ever. It's such a weird bargain,
Yeah.
it's like a devil's contract or something.
The bigger
And,
problem for me is that I don't fit into stereotypes for the most part. Like I don't, and it happens a lot, weirdly enough, with like voice acting. Like I voice act and I get all sorts of different roles, but sometimes when I get African American characters, it's clear that they want a particular voice for it, and that's not what I sound like. So it's really like tough because sometimes I'm just gonna, like, if it's not written a particular way, like I'm just gonna do it the way that I'm gonna do it. But every once in a while, you get a part that is very much explicitly written in, like, I think it was called AVM, like the American vernacular, or it's like what was originally referred to as Ebonics, and
oh,
so it's more urban, and it's not me. It's just not how I grew up. I never learned how to speak in that cadence authentically. And so for me to try and put that on, and people are like, oh, it's just like any other accent. I'm like, it's really not. It's much more culturally loaded than a regular accent. And I think that it's a very, every time it happens, and it happens rarely, but when it does, it like makes me have to reevaluate of like, all right, I have to do this in a way that makes me feel good about it. Where if this audio ever gets in the wrong hands, it's not going to feel cringy or like bad, you know?
no. So, do you have a tough skin then? Because it seems like you've experienced just probably millions of microaggressions throughout your whole life,
um,
just from like all the things
mhm.
you've told me, you
Yeah.
know.
I don't even know that if I have a tough skin, because I still like think about them a lot. But I think that one of the things that has helped me like recently, or like in the past couple years, has been this realization that I'm not defined by what other people think I look like, or what value they think I can add. It's like if you look at me and you feel that the only value that I can provide is in like this very shallow aesthetic of what you're doing, that I don't think that's somebody that I should be working with, because it's not somebody who's like imaginative in the way that I would need them to be imaginative. Like that was the other thing that I really liked about improv, is nobody could tell me that my character choice was wrong. Like nobody could tell me I couldn't be the president. Nobody could tell me I couldn't be a mouse who's addicted to, I don't know, cheese. Like it's not and so nobody could say like, oh, you can't play that, you can't play a pirate. Like anybody can play a pirate. But it was interesting when my classmates, or like when peers that I would have, would distance themselves from me. Or I had a classmate who was also a person of color, and she like so badly wanted to do, and this is her language here. She was like, we've got to do a ghetto girl scene together. And I was like, I really don't think we gotta do that. We don't gotta do that. That's not something we gotta do, or like we'll be in trouble. Like
What's the motivation behind that? Like,
she was she loved hip hop music. She was Asian, I believe, but she loved hip hop music, and she super identified with like Black culture, and that's totally fine. And I love that, and I respect that. And come talk to me about rap music all you want, but don't put me in a situation where I'm gonna play a character that's like a mockery, or like a caricature of this already very well-worn stereotype. And so it was funny. I remember like I didn't end up doing a scene with her, but I was doing a scene for this was for an intensive I did in Chicago, and I did a scene with another guy, and the suggestion was south side of Chicago as the location. And I was like, all right, well, so I was like waiting for the bus, and my scene partner like pulls his hood up and like puts his hands in his pockets, and he's getting all like, intense posturing. And he's like, what's up? And I was like, oh, nothing. And he's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to school. And he's like, and then when you go to school, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to get a good education. He's like, and then when you get a good education, what are you going to do? She's like, I'm going to go to law school, and I'm going to bring what I learned back to the streets. And he's like, that's what's up. And that was how we started the scene. And that was a much funner way to take that suggestion.
I like that. That's very sensitive to the suggestion, because sometimes audiences will give you suggestions. You're like, hey, that's fucked up. Or you clearly want to see me do that.
Something embarrassing.
Yeah.
But that's the other challenge that we have as improvisers is like, we could take anything and make it into something it's not. And make it into something more interesting. And that's the gift. The greatest gift I think that you can give as an improviser is that somebody can give you a suggestion that is not necessarily a helpful suggestion. And it could be the jumping off point to a very interesting, awesome show. And that audience member is a part of what made that happen. That's the gift. If you can get that to happen, that's what you're going for. And I think sometimes audience members, it's a difficult social contract, because some audience members legitimately are trying to do the best of intentions, and they're just trying to give a suggestion, and that's what they thought of. Some audience members are purposefully trying to destabilize a show or say something controversial or be super rude to the performers. And in those moments, F that audience member, but thank you so much for the suggestion. How am I going to make this into something interesting?
You're right. The suggestion is as only good as the improviser, and it's not your job to take it literally or to deliver what the audience wants you to deliver. It's just your job to be inspired by it and explore something based on it. Just what it makes you think about, you know?
Oh, yeah. When teachers told me you don't literally have to use the word pineapple, that opened up a whole world for me. Where like, if the suggestion is pineapple, think about what pineapples make you think of. And like, for me, one of the things is like SpongeBob or vacation or something that's prickly. Like, you could literally have a scene about a character who's just very prickly as like a character trait. And that's still honoring the suggestion, you know? You don't literally have to say the word pineapple, as much as audience members go like, you didn't say pineapple. It's like, no, but it was inspired by the word pineapple.
Yeah, sometimes audiences are just too literal. Now, one thing I find interesting here is, so you were in this very cased like world of musical theater, like racial cased. And then I guess on the side, you discovered improv and discovered, here's a space where I can be whoever I want without changing who I am, or who I am just as a regular person has no impact on what characters I play. And that is actually really freeing. I never think about that, but like when I've done mostly improv and scripted work in the longevity of my career, but like I hate when someone hits me up, hey Fernando, you would be the cholo in my short film.
Yeah.
And it's like, bro, I'm good. If it's like another Latino writing it, oh yeah, sure, let me think about if I can. But if it's a white guy, hey Fernando, I have this taco vendor. It's like, why would you think of me? Why can't I be the lead? You know?
Yeah.
You're fucking
100%.
But
you don't
want to shatter your white friend's egos. You're just like, no thanks, bro, I'm busy.
Yeah, no thanks, not this time.
Yeah, or if they catch you at a bad time, you're kind of like, what the fuck are you thinking about? You know?
It's tough, because I think the bigger problem is because it's so prevalent and because it's so consistent, it's like every time it happens, it just compounds and compounds and compounds. And it's like, dude, can you not think of anything more interesting to write about? Like, it's a lot of, and I mean, I know it's a meme of like, I don't want to hear about another white guy's time travel movie, but it is kind of this idea of like, I have a lot of people who I know who revisit very similar territory and not super effectively. And it's really, really tough, because it's not even that I don't want them to be successful, because I legitimately do, but I just don't know if I can be on that journey helping them get to that point sometimes.
No, well, you shouldn't. Like I said earlier, right? Part of the reason I work with like mostly Latinx now, or diverse groups, and which is try to have gender parity as well.
Yeah.
Is just because like, I don't know, when you're the minority in something, and I mean like a true minority where there's like only one or two of you.
Yes.
You get, and you probably know more than I do, or you know what I mean talking about. You get put in this box that is invisible, and you feel it, and it constrains you, and it limits you, and everyone else has no idea that they put you in that box. And very often, white people, and they get mad at you if you try to protest about the box, and they're like, "What are you talking about? Like, why aren't you being cool? Like, you're our friend. Like."
It's like
just
the white
relax.
fragility. It's this idea that they don't want to believe that they might be like subconsciously or inadvertently a part of the problem, but then they also don't want to admit if they are purposefully a part of the problem. So, like, either way, you're trapped in this thing of, if you're the one that raises the flag, they would rather remove the person of color, the marginalized person, the only one in the room who's raised the concern, than anybody else in the room who's made uncomfortable by the concern being raised. And until the impact is shifted, we're going to have this consistent systemic problem. And art, quite frankly, in this moment, like, art is like the lowest on the priority list. However, art is, for a lot of people, the first touch point. Like, if you're in Wisconsin or a flyover state and you don't know any Black people, you don't know any Hispanic people, you don't know any Indigenous people, trans people, nothing, the only way you get access to those people is through media. And so if TV doesn't forward diversity, if comedy doesn't forward diversity, these entry points for people's understanding of what culture and life is like, we aren't going to get the other parts. Like, they all do have to work together. So until comedy can get over itself, quite frankly, we're going to have this issue. And I do think that there are people higher up who have been sensitive or overly sensitive of, like, oh, no, we don't have a diversity problem. This is just what's happening. Like, these are just the comedians. We're open to everybody. We're equal opportunity. Everybody's money is green. But, like, you look at the levels and you look at the teacher and you look at the way that the institution develops and you look at the show opportunities that are available to people of color, and over time you realize there's just a fraction of the opportunities.
Well, it's funny you say everything you just said. Everyone, if listening, write that down, because Mayanna just gave us a thesis on some deep topics about how media representation of minorities affects the majority's perception of us, and how that stuff gets rooted in our minds, and how, you know, that presentation becomes perception, which I think is all very true. And the idea that if you're going to eliminate whatever's going to make you uncomfortable, and if that's a person of color calling you out on your, like, unconscious racism or microaggressions, you're just going to get rid of them, as opposed to actually having that deeper conversation with yourself. It's funny for me, I've had a lot of haters in my day, I have to admit it, because I'm a little cocky sometimes with my improv. Not so much anymore. I'm trying to learn to be more humble, you know, and I've done a pretty good job the past few years, but I was cocky and I get shit. And when whoever gave me shit, it was always white improvisers. It was always white.
They don't want you to be confident.
Yeah, they were threatened by me.
Threatened by that, of course, absolutely.
Yeah, the thing was, like, I wasn't going out there to prove I was better than them. I was out there just prove that I was good for myself.
You're trying to best yourself, but that's the most intimidating part.
Yeah, and I've pissed off a lot of white improvisers in my day. Never the meaning, never the intention, but just, like, having confidence. Maybe it's I don't know. Maybe it's a white culture thing that I don't get. I
just say you're unapologetic. You don't apologize for who you are, and I think a lot of the status quo as it is asks for people of color to be consistently apologetic for who they are.
Oh my God, you're so right. There's so many times I've been, like, in white spaces where I have to be, like, diplomatic, and I have to, like, monitor my energy and my posture, because I'm a big guy too. So it's like, oh, I'm a big guy, plus I'm a big brown. I really better, like.
But you don't read aggressive at all. Like, you're a very mild-mannered, nice, chill person. Like, you're very approachable. You're very friendly.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course, man.
But you're a fellow brown person, though. You're a fellow brown person, though. You know,
no,
I'm sorry, you're African American.
I'm equal opportunity. I don't trust nobody. So, like, I walk into a room and everybody's on notice until they're not. Like, I'm like, I gotta scope this shit out. Like, I remember in that class specifically, like, there were probably like 16 of us, and there were some where you kind of knew immediately, like, I don't think I'm gonna get along with this person. And then some that were, like, snuck up on you. So I'm always kind of like, all right, cool. Let's just, like, see what happens. Not going to make any decisions about anybody just yet. But, like, by week 4, you get a sense of, like, wow, I really don't agree with this person's politics. I really don't agree with this person's perspective on their own work. I don't agree with why they're, and I've softened on the idea of people who are like, oh, I'm just taking this improv class because my agent told me to. Sure, that's great. I'm just glad you're here. But I do think that there is this concern with people who want to be good not because they want to be good, but they want to be good because they want this validation from this system. And anybody who has that vibe, like ethnicity aside, I just like don't want to engage with you, because like I don't want to be responsible for me telling you you're funny when I don't legitimately believe that. I don't make me have to lie to your face.
No, well, I'll tell you this. You know, we all say good show no matter what to somebody, because you don't want to like shit on them if they had a bad show.
Yeah.
But if someone's had a good show, you will compliment the fuck out of them and you'll point out specific things. If someone has a bad show, like, hey man, great show, I'm out of here.
Or you're like, well, they're hugging somebody else. It's time for me to go. But I do think one of the things that I really respect about you and that I saw in that class was just like, you did know what you were doing. You did know what you were bringing. And the feedback you agreed with, you were like, yeah, okay, I agree with that. And the feedback you didn't agree with, you didn't have to tell them you didn't agree with it. But like, I could tell. I'm like, that note, I don't know about that one. And I felt the same way. I felt the same way about notes with me in that class, where sometimes I was like, no, I literally did the exercise. I don't understand why I'm being.
You were very funny in that class. I just think you didn't do the UCB math.
Yeah, I didn't follow the exact rubric.
Maybe you did some other type of improv math, but you didn't do the UCB math.
Yeah.
So you got hammered down for that. Yeah. So what you're hammered down for wasn't your technique. It wasn't for your substance. It was for the technique.
Yeah.
You know, but if you can make a sandwich, doesn't matter how you make it, you can make a sandwich.
That's kind of how I feel too. Is like one of the things about UCB improv and any school that has like a very specific branded form of improv, because it's not a UCB problem. It's just like an institutional problem. It's a
improv problem wide that I have the truth to how to do improv, and
yes, because
the other schools are flawed or whatever
financially. Yeah. But the thing is, I feel like the schools are like, oh, we have to have this different version because they're only going to go to one school or whatever. Dude, I know so many people who go to all the schools. Like, it's not about like, oh, mine has to be like UCB branded, like we have to be so about this UCB culture. Just like teach technique, teach fundamentals, like each teacher should have their own perspective on improv. That's how I feel about it. Like, I'm paying for an interesting instructor more so than I think like, oh, I'm gonna figure out how to do this like special type of improv.
Well, I'll tell you this, when I was in San Francisco, I worked with a UCB New York teacher. His name was Dan Giberman. Just one class with him, like one workshop. And he was a teacher at Stanford. So there you go. The guy was a genius.
Yeah.
And he told me just a few notes, but the notes made so much sense to me that they just immediately printed in my brain. And one thing he said, he's like, if you're going to play game, learn logic. And once you find the logic of something, you just explore that logic to its logical conclusion. And he's like, if you want to do heralds, just watch Seinfeld. Watch as much Seinfeld as you can.
Dude, it's true.
And you'll learn about heralds and game. And I was like, that's all he said, though. Literally, it was like just a few crumbs or just a few seeds. But I literally, for years, I went and watched Seinfeld and I studied logic. Not like deeply, but just, really always tried to be like, if this, then that, that kind of stuff. But like, just by me doing that own process, I learned a lot than like maybe from taking a class.
Yeah. A good teacher who's been in the form for a long time and who has a perspective on how it should be done. It's not always about you have to do it this way to get the thing that you need, but it's like, here's how I've approached it. And then the student takes it upon themselves to see if that approach works for them or not. If you're interested in learning like the fundamentals, but I think some people want to learn the thing that gets them like famous, or the thing that gets them stage time, or the thing that gets them in with a particular teacher. And I just don't think those are necessarily the right priorities to have. That's my opinion. If it works, it works. But
I totally agree with you. I think one thing I'm learning is that it's just about developing general comedy skills. And wherever you learn them is fine. You can learn them at UCB, your second city of the pack, IO, whatever. Like, there's general comedy skills that you just have to be aware of them, what their function is, how to use them, when to use them, what not to use them. They're just skills that it's like tools that you have to know how to use them and when to use them, I guess.
You're not going to be Amy Poehler. You're not going to be Jerry Seinfeld. You're going to be you. So you have to figure out the best form of you that can convey these ideas that you feel and want to express. Conan
O'Brien has a great quote. That says, he says, what was it? I forgot what it was. He goes, oh yeah. He says, what's his name? That guy.
Is it Johnny Carson?
No, sorry. It's what's that guy's name? Woody Allen, the guy.
Oh,
Steve
yeah.
Allen. He goes. Steve Allen was trying. I'm so sorry. I got it now. Steve
Okay.
Allen was trying to be Jack Benny. Johnny Carson was trying to be Steve Allen. David Letterman was trying to be Johnny Carson. And me, Conan O'Brien, I was trying to be David Letterman.
Mm.
And he's like, and it's in our failure to imitate our heroes that we ultimately discover who we truly are.
Yes. I love that.
So like, yeah, maybe some of that was kind of like mismatched, but the idea is like you kind of have people like, oh, I like this person's comedy. I want to do it like that. And you try it, and because you develop good taste, right? Like that famous Ira Glass podcast about taste. Like if you have good taste, one day you'll be good. You'll suck for a while, but when you have good taste, that's kind of like the first signal that maybe there's a possibility here for you. But you kind of have to be who you are. And if you try really hard to be somebody else, like you're not going to make it. You have to discover what are my strengths, what makes me unique, and develop that, lean into that.
Create unique contributions and a unique commodity, because unique commodities are always going to be in high demand. Like if you want Seinfeld, you'll watch Seinfeld. I'm not going to watch somebody's best impression of Seinfeld comedy.
Yes, exactly. Because you'd just be like, oh, this is like Seinfeld.
Yeah, like I've already seen this. I know what this is.
I read this blog too.
Mm-hmm.
It might be Jackson Pollock.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson Pollock, he had a brother who was a painter too, actually.
Ooh.
Yeah, and him and his brother, I think, were mentored by the same amazing turn of the century painter. I can't remember who it is.
Mm-hmm.
But Jackson Pollock's brother did his best to imitate his mentor and to replicate the work his mentor was doing. Where Jackson Pollock said, fuck it, I'm going to do my own style. And that's how he did that crazy, I don't know, paint all over the place.
Splatter paint thing.
Splatter paint. Yeah, I'm not an art critic or art aficionado, but he said basically like, I'm going to figure out what's my way of doing it. And we all remember him. And I know he had a brother, because he just went to like, I'm just going to replicate what worked before.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, if you're cooking, if you're like a baker or something, well, of course you want to replicate it. But I don't know, if you're an artist, you got to kind of find your own take on things, your own commentary on life.
Sure. And I think, even in baking, like you look at the guy who made the cronut, and it's like, you have to have a good understanding of pastry to make a croissant and a donut. You have to have an artistic curiosity to try and create something so structurally confusing as a cronut. But, only somebody who is the best at their craft could figure out how to make that possible. And it's with everything. Like, know the fundamentals, know the foundations, but know that you have to bring something new to it once you've done all of that other work. Yeah,
I will say that once your technical skills are there, then you can unlock your personal voice or personal commentary, but you do have to develop your technical skills. You're totally right 100%. About that. Wow, Mayanna, it's been great talking to you today.
Thank you so much.
It's been an hour and it just breezed by.
Oh yeah. I love talking about all this stuff, and I could never talk about it enough. So thank you so much
you were great. You brought up so many interesting topics and perspectives, and you weren't afraid to go into any of these controversial things. Maybe they're not controversial for you or I, but for other people, it'll be like, oh man, they're saying white people a lot. And
I worry, but at the same time, it's like I feel that I have a lot of empathy and understanding for both sides of this argument, but I also know that at a certain point, you have to hold people accountable, and you have to just kind of call a spade a spade.
Exactly. You know what? I think you bring up a good point. I think the reason that these movements are happening right now from a representation of BIPOC in these spaces is just for accountability. It's just like, hey, this hasn't been a good space for us, and we're going to let you know now so that we can all make it better.
Hopefully. That's the hope.
I hope so. Well, where can we follow you on social media? Is there anything you want to plug?
Yes, you can follow me at Mayanna Berrin on Instagram. That is where I post the most frequently. I will not plug any of my other social media because it's not as consistent. But I'm working on some writing. I work on voiceover stuff sometimes. I do my friends' podcasts sometimes. So anything that I do, I will update it on Instagram.
All right, awesome. All right, one last thing before we go.
Mm-hmm.
What is just a general lesson of life that you want to share with the world?
A general lesson of life that I want to share. I have found it infinitely more rewarding to follow the things that I love rather than dwell on the things that I hate.
Bam. Everyone go get that tattooed on your arm right now. It's very deep and profound because it's true. All right, everyone. This has been the Improv Life, Fernando's Improv Blog podcast. Please listen to this episode. Share it with your network. Share it with everybody because Mayanna is amazing. This has been a great episode. Thank you for being on. And
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, have a good night, everyone. It's We're Family at Night. Bye-bye.